bringing you a Sophianic broadcast featuring visionary teacher John Lamb Lash. Today is the 14th of April 2018. It's day 28 of this Swan Dover shift. The title of this recording is simply Responsibility. We wanted to do this recording to help John set himself another boundary. After we talked about boundaries and John's wishes for how his work will develop and his legacy continues after he's not here, the other day, we just wanted to get down on record the huge responsibility that, John, you're feeling about putting out to the world the Shakti Cluster app. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of background. We were just about to record on the video camera how to use the app, and John was feeling a bit hyper, so I suggested a glass of cava. I opened the bottle of cava, which promptly slipped straight out of my hand and then exploded into John's face, covering him, the ceiling. But literally volcanic cava went straight into your eyes and stopped us dead in our tracks, recording the Shakti Cluster.
A minor interruption, yes. It burns, kava. If you ever get a face full of kava in your eyes, I can tell you it burns pretty strongly. We salvaged one glass apiece.
We calmed ourselves down. We chatted about how you're feeling, and I suggested it would be a good idea for us to record how you're feeling about putting out the app, just to take some more pressure off you, because you're really struggling at the moment.
Yes, I have been struggling quite a bit with this.
Why are you struggling?
Well, I don't fully understand what's going on with me, but having this conversation is talking me through my own state of mind. That's the purpose of this conversation. And anyone who wants to eavesdrop, it's really an intimate conversation between you and I, isn't it?
Yeah.
So anyone who wants to eavesdrop on it is welcome to do so. The practice of planetary tantra, which I've introduced, and of which I am the sole source on the planet, has transparency as one of its standards. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
So here we are, the two of us sitting in the corner of our little studio here, being transparent. And I've been not a happy camper lately, and I don't really know why. I was just saying to Ginny that I'm really feeling at odds with myself about certain things. And we've been talking here today and trying to get to some insight about what's going on. So we're going to continue this conversation for all the world to hear.
So I'm just going to update people. You have shown two different groups of people in your personal reality how the app works.
That's right. And what were those two occasions? One was...
Well, we had guests staying recently.
Right.
Friends, close friends, students and allies.
Loyal allies. And we sat right here in this corner. And I think there were eight of us around. And then we recorded that conversation as well. You were one of those who was tending that.
So that was the second time I've seen you and heard you demonstrate how the app works. And I was just trying to remind John, those two occasions, whoever was present sat there with their jaws open wide in awe and wonderment of the use of the app. But you've reached. You're stalling with the app. It's taken you 9 years to write an essay on the Shakti cluster and how to use the Shakti cluster.
Indeed, it has.
And you're not happy with it yet, so.
No, I'm not there yet. Something that you said to me when we were talking upstairs was moving. And it helped me to hear you say that when you said that those who sat right here a week ago or so in this corner and watched me give the elementary demonstration of the Shakti Cluster app and how to use it really felt what you said was awe and
wonderment.
And wonderment. Awe and wonderment. Well, those are the proper emotions to feel. Those are the correct emotions, the true emotions that anyone who truly sees what this is will feel. The problem with me, and that's why we're having this conversation, is to figure out what is the problem with me. The problem with me is that I'm so embedded in it, I'm so inside it, that I don't even know that. I don't know how it comes across, and this is difficult for me. It's coming from me, from my depths, and I am in the depths of that power.
Which is enormous responsibility that I'm sure nobody else.
It's a huge responsibility, and this is a talk about responsibility. We agree. But I want to make it clear in the first 5-6 minutes here that I don't associate the word responsibility with some kind of burden, although it is a huge responsibility for me to undertake, and obviously I'm having some trouble getting through that. So getting back to what you said, the difficulty that I have often, that I've had in planetary tantra, being the originator of it and being at the source of it in the way I am, embedded, if you want to use that term, it's really difficult for me to see the way that it comes across to other people, and this troubles me a lot and raises doubts for me.
And you're also your own worst critic, or your own best critic.
I'm terrible. I overdo self-criticism to a point of absurdity, really. And I have to rely on the people around me who love and care about me to tell me to take it easy on myself. But it's not really being self-critical now that's bothering me. It's more of a kind of realization that's come to me at this culmination point.
So it's a sad realization.
Yeah, there's an element of sadness in it. There's an element of tragedy in it for me. And that may sound odd, because why shouldn't I be delighted and excited, and why shouldn't I be proud and totally, positive about bringing something as wonderful as this to the world, But I'm not. I am those things, but I also have a deep feeling of tragedy, and I have a deep feeling of concern about what I'm doing, and it really is causing me
great pain
and misery at moments.
It's causing you misery.
Yeah, it is.
But would it be fair to share with people who listen to you that misery tends to be your default setting?
Well, I wish not anymore,
Okay, but again, we're back to the Grail keeper. The person who keeps the Grail has to be the son of a widow. You were born into grief and misery.
This is true.
Your father died while you were still in the womb.
This is true. This is true.
You don't know any different.
And my mother sat in a dark room in Brooklyn drinking gin. So the family joke was that when the gin broke, they knew that Loretta or Laura was ready to give birth, and then they put me in a hearse, put her in a hearse. So I was almost born in a hearse. That's the story of my grief.
Yeah, it's kind of made the setting for your life.
Yeah, it did. You know, you could, if I wrote my autobiography, I would say born in a hearse. You know, that's sort of where it started. But at the same time, as all that is true, I don't want to, you know, one of my big concerns is I don't want to contaminate my message or the message of Gnosis, living Gnosis today, and the Sophianic message with the grief and tragedy that I've carried in my life, which actually marks me, and everybody who sees me and knows me knows this. You know, so I want to transcend that, and I'm at the point of transcending that. But I guess this final point of transcending it is really a difficult moment.
Let's talk about happiness for a minute then.
Yeah, well, you talk about it if you know what it is. I don't have any idea.
Well, before we started recording this, when we were having our conversation, you know, you kept using this. I'm not happy. I'm not happy about putting this out. I'm not happy with what I've written about the app. I'm not happy. And you know, a few weeks ago we had a conversation about happy.
We did indeed.
And we decided to spit that word out of our mouths and only refer to it in certain circumstances which aren't about you and I. Because, you know, define happiness. It's a fleeting feeling.
It is transient. Yeah. It is transient. I see happiness in animals.
Me too.
Yeah, and I get happiness with animals. And it's not something that comes. I can guarantee you that happiness and bliss do not necessarily come with enlightenment. But they're not excluded either. I mean, there's tremendous bliss. In a way, I'm always in bliss. I've been in bliss since August 8th of 2008. I've been in bliss since then. But that bliss does not exclude these other emotions. That bliss, it's like an ocean. It has been often described as an ocean of bliss. Hasn't it? You know that. It's like an ocean. But there's a lot of debris in that ocean. The debris of human misery, including my own. The misery of the whole fucking human race is floating in that ocean of bliss.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's not just one or the other. It's all and everything at once. And everything at once is culminating now. That's why...
Well, yeah, I mean, we're on the... Looks like humanity is on the brink of World War III.
Yeah. I mean,
which is upsetting. You've lost your humanity if you're not feeling that huge chasm that we are all facing for Syria.
What's Syria? The heartland of the mysteries. You know, I mean, I'm in contact with someone in Syria.
Yeah.
Who teaches English at the university in Damascus.
Yeah.
Who's on the verge of translating the Fallen Goddess scenario into Arabic. You see? And if you can't feel for the Syrian people and what's happening in Syria today, then you can't feel for humanity. And you may as well write yourself off as far as I'm concerned. So I've been feeling that terribly over the last few days.
Yes.
Everything is coming together at once here, you know, and I'm recalling that passage from the Nag Hammadi texts at the culmination of their works, referring to the culmination of the work of the archons. And this is the culmination of their works. This is it, right now, as I speak. I assure you.
How many seconds of her time are left to the end of the Kalpa?
About 10 minutes.
So, this is it.
This is it.
This is it.
And at the culmination of the work of the archons, what do you see when you look out into the world and in the social order? You see nothing but deceit. You see the President of the United States standing in front of the world, lying through his teeth in the most obscene and vile manner, and everyone else chiming in with these lies.
Well, yeah, look at what's happened in Britain. This, the alleged
the lie about the poisoning.
Chemical poisoning to some Russian double agent and his daughter. What lies, what theatre, all just so that they can garner public backing for their next conflict.
And even that is a huge deceit, because they don't need public backing.
No.
Why do the politicians come out and make these explanations? It's all fucking make-believe, People wonder about the choice of the target for the Charlotte working. Let me say something about that for a moment, because I don't think I've said that.
Somebody commented recently about them being relatively insignificant.
Right. The choice of the target for the Charlotte working was not made by me. I've said this before, and I'm saying it again right now, and you better pay attention. It was not my choice, and this choice appears to some people to be irrelevant and trivial. So why don't you take out, Benjamin Netanyahu? Why don't you take out whoever, some politician or some player in the world? All of those evil psychopaths, all of those lying traitors who ought to be shot or hanged in public, all of them are into the same act of make-believe. It's all about make-believe.
Spectral forms.
And they are the spectral forms of the archons who are propagating deceit, division, domination, and the Xenosh agenda. And how do they do it? They do it through make-believe. And so therefore, the target of the Charlotte working is a target chosen because of her role in propagating make-believe. It's not even that significant that it's any particular individual. It's the power of make-believe is the target of the Charlotte working. Mm. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Because the power of make-believe, just running this deceit, is what has to be defeated in order for the power of her dreaming to prevail. And that is what I want most. I just told you that upstairs. Mm. It's what I want most in my life. What I want to see before I die, and what everyone who upholds what I have brought into the world wants to see the same thing, don't they? Yeah. They want to see the power of her dreaming proven in the world, in the theater of world events. And we can see that now. We can see that now. And introducing the Shakti Cluster app is part of the proof that we supply that her dreaming power is true. You are the proof. You have to be the proof. There's no external proof. There's no external savior. Nobody's going to save anybody here. And yet there is an act of divine intervention underway. I'm certain of it. But it can't be conceived in the same way that any other messianic or savior scenario has been depicted. It is an act of divine intervention. You might remember that when I came back on air and did the Mythophrenia talks about the Great Deception and all that, I pointed out the fact that if you were to do a survey of the world population today, what is it, 6.5 billion, probably more now, 7 or so, almost every single person living on the earth believes in divine intervention. Did you know that?
And not only does every person believe, nearly every single person believe in divine intervention, every single person, most likely, would never want war.
But this is true. That's right. That's exactly right. So who does want war? Who does it benefit? Well, you know that already.
Do you know who?
You know who. Do you know who? The story is so clear. It couldn't be any clearer. So, at the consummation of their works, of the Xenos, of the Archons, of the psychopaths, and all the people who serve them in the media, all the news people who are just brainwashed zombies, they're members of a cult who get up on the 6 o'clock news and just repeat what the cult masters have told them to repeat. All of that evil and deceit culminates at the same moment that her magic culminates. And her magic, her correction, is so enormous. What is it? Vast and vast.
Vast and vast.
Vast and vast, as our Serbian friend once said. It's
so
vast
and fast.
Yeah, it's vast and fast, beyond what you can imagine, and yet there is an increment, there is a homeopathic dose of human imagination in that vast event. That's our responsibility to uphold.
So before we go back to the app, do you want to talk about Syria a little bit more?
Yeah. I would like to talk about Syria, and I would like to say just one thing that I thought about as I was taking a walk this morning out in the hills, not far from Charlotte's Ridge. I have this strange feeling that something very good is happening in Syria. And I'm going to go on record as saying that. It will never be reported. Good news is never going to be reported in the media, is it?
Well, the entire thing about Syria has been lies.
It's a total
The
lie.
only people to listen to talk about Syria are Assad himself, the only politician in my entire life I've trusted and revered and loved everything that comes out of his mouth, Eva Bartlett and Vanessa Beeley.
That's right.
As far as I'm concerned, they're the only 3 people that anybody should listen to about Syria.
That's right. And what's happening in Syria really weighs so heavily on my heart, and it has a lot to do with how I've been feeling for the last few days. I can tell you that I would be so devastated if Assad and his wife and children are murdered. And there are people who want them murdered. I think the President of the United States should have stood up and said, I want to see him and his wife and children murdered. That would have been much more honest than the bullshit that he said about Americans. I'm an American. He's telling me that I have the responsibility to go in and punish this man for something that he never even did and something that never even happened.
Well, the truth is, go in and punish this man for not acquiescing to Rothschild's centralised banking.
That's right. And not going along with the Xenos agenda for a greater Israel, which involves more or less taking over the country of Syria.
He's so evil, Assad, isn't it? You can
tell he exudes evil from every pore.
That evil optometrist.
Yeah, really.
Oh, he's so lovely.
He's a reluctant leader. He's a reluctant warrior. And I must say that so was Adolf Hitler. If you really understand Adolf Hitler was not a warrior, even though he was a war hero. But in his own eyes and in his own sense of his mission, he was just a leader, a statesman. He's not a warrior any more than Assad is a warrior. And yet he's turning out to be a very, very great warrior.
I disagree with that. I think Hitler was a warrior. He was a warrior in the First World War.
But he was reluctant to go to war.
Well, who wants to go to war?
Who wants war? Who wants war? If you don't know who wants war, then you may as well sign out of the movie at this point.
So just to reiterate as well, if the MMS and your politicians are calling for a regime change, that means that country is not acquiescing to centralised banking and whatever is good for the State of Israel.
That's correct. So, let me just say about Syria, I would be so devastated if that country goes down and Assad and his family are killed. But I'm going to say something now. This is not a prediction, but it's a guess. It's a gut feeling that I have. That's not going to happen. And do you know why that's not going to happen? Why Assad and his family will not be killed and Syria will not go under? It's obvious. Because Russia won't let it happen. That's a fact. Russia doesn't want that to happen, and Russia has the power. The government of Russia and the military of Russia have the power to prevent that from happening, and they will do everything that they can to prevent that from happening.
But you're not saying Russia is
the good guy,
the good guy?
No,
because of course Putin is of the tribe.
That's right.
I think he's a maverick tribal member. He's got his own agenda, and we're talking about political theatre, world theatre.
It's all theatre, it's all gangsters, it's all warring gangster mafia clans, like the different mafia families that, you know the story of the mafia families who assassinate each other and have turf wars. This is a big turf war, and I'm not pretending that I'm not rooting for Putin. I'm not pretending that he's a savior. But in the great world drama, this is what the challenge of the moment requires you to see. And it takes a lot of imagination and a lot of sobriety to see this. In the great world drama, as evil and deceitful as it is, somehow the power and beauty of her dreaming is coming through. And so I'm going to say this. I'm going to commit myself to saying this now because it came to me on the walk today, and I feel better saying this. Whatever the Russian military and Putin and the Russian state may be, it looks to me like they might present the blind instrument of Sophia's correction in this situation, if they can actually prevent Syria from going down.
If Syria goes down.
As Syria goes, so goes the world. I'm telling you that if Syria goes down, it's going to be a huge tragedy for the human race. Huge tragedy. But I don't think Syria is going to go down. In fact, I think, again, now I'm just guessing here, I'm just saying all this to make myself feel better, so bear with me. I think that the plan is for Syria not to go down.
Well, she hasn't gone down yet.
She hasn't gone down yet.
No matter what the MMS say, she's not gone down yet.
No, the plan is for America to go down. And I guess it's about time for that to happen. Because the way I see it, and I'm not a geopolitical analyst, but probably one of the most respected geopolitical analysts on the planet said this a couple of days ago.
Who's that?
Paul Craig Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
He amazed me by echoing my thought. And I don't pretend to be a geopolitical analyst, but this is my thought. If and when Russia strikes due to being provoked, and the provocation is obvious, and due to the American military launching missiles against Syria, if and when they do, they have the ability to crush the power of the United States in half an hour. They really do. And maybe that's what has to happen. The military power of the United States.
Which is Israeli power.
Which is Israeli power and is Zionist occupied and run by the Zenosh. Now, I'm not saying that, and when I was thinking about this when I was on my walk, let me just add this and then we'll get back to the Shakti app, because this is on my walk today and it made me feel better. I have spoken in the past about something that happened 101 years ago in Russia, which is the Bolshevik takeover of the Tsarist regime of Russia. It was not a Russian revolution. It was not for the Russian people, and it wasn't...
No, it was to decimate the Russian people.
It was to decimate the Russian people.
It was to decimate the Sophianic calling that was coming through.
Right. The Russian people, 100 years ago, felt that they had a Sophianic calling. They identified the power of Mother Russia with the figure of Sophia as they understood it through the filter of Orthodox Greek Christianity and through the filter of their tradition since the conversion of Russia in the 10th century. And the power and presence, the power and beauty and magic of the Aeonic Mother is the greatest threat in this world to the enemies of life and the Zenosh. And any human feeling that responds to that power, and any poetry or art or literature or philosophy or science that expresses her power to the world, is an enormous threat to them. Well, 101 years ago, that power was emerging in Russia. And when I've spoken in the past about what has been erroneously called the Russian Revolution, I've said there were many factors that caused the Zenosh to target Russia at that time. It was ripe for the plucking. But one of those factors was the emergence in a vast tsunami of the folk feeling of Russia, the emergence of the image of Sophia, as you see in the work of Vladimir Soloviev particularly, who had 3 ecstatic encounters with the Sophia. So that was Russia 101 years ago. Now, I point out something to you about a theme in mythology. There's a theme in mythology of 1 year and a day. And this is called the underworld theme. For instance, in the Welsh mythology, one of the heroes of Welsh mythology in the Mabinogion goes into the underworld and disappears in the Nahwal and returns 1 year and 1 day later. So what we see enacted on the theater of the world stage is an exponential expansion of that. It's not 1 year and a day. It's 100 years and 1 year. It's 1917 to 2017 plus 1 year. Why is it that Russia is the one power in the world today, the state of Russia, the military of Russia, and presumably the people of Russia, because Putin just got elected by an enormous vote of confidence, right? Why is it that it would be the state of Russia that now stands in the way of Syria being taken down? Well, I say that's because 101 years ago, it was through Russia that she was coming into the world. And so, in those 101 years, things have developed to the point where Russia stands in the way of taking down the country that is the homeland of the mysteries. And I see a poetic and a historical justice in that scenario, if you follow me.
And this is a metaphor for what's going on with you at the moment with the Shut Cluster app.
Yes, it is.
So it's tragedy and hope.
You can call it tragedy and hope, although I don't like the word hope.
No, because...
Right. It's a tragedy that has to come almost true in order for the witnesses of the power of the Aeonic Mother to actually own that power. We have to be that close to the tragedy. The destruction of Syria would be...
And Iran next.
And Iran next. Iran, by the way, is... Syria is the heartland of the mysteries, and Iran is actually the homeland of the mysteries, because the mysteries developed from the Magian order, which was formed in the near Lake Urmia in the northern part of Iran 6,000 years BC. So that's the big picture, which is looming in my imagination now. And all that brings us around to the moment when the Shakti Cluster app is released into the world. It is the same moment that these events are happening. And
that's why you're feeling so much angst.
Part of why. Let's talk about responsibility, okay? Because that's the point of this talk, and we're just having this talk to get me through this. I have to say openly, because I don't hold anything back, I hate withholding, that my responsibility to release this tool to the world carries a heavy concern for me.
So what's your concerns?
My concern is that I know for a gut certainty that by putting this app into the hands of the world at large, that it will, in some cases, cause and bring about in the lives of people tremendous disappointment and despair, because it won't work.
Disappointment, despair, and hope.
Let's leave aside the issue of hope for a moment. Let's just talk about the disappointment and the despair. Let me make one thing clear. When I got this Terma 9 years ago, and when I got the Shakti cluster all in this massive download, I also had the certainty at that time. I was in the capture of a state of manic excitement. I was in a bliss, but I was in a cognitive bliss. Cognitive bliss is a state of mystical illumination, which is different from what many people identify as mystical illumination, which is merely the oceanic feeling of being one with everything. To many, by many accounts, that is the form of cosmic consciousness and mystical illumination.
Yeah, but it's not. It's like happiness. It's a fleeting, transient emotion.
That's right.
You can be in a state of bliss in cosmic consciousness through whatever path you want to get to it from. Vipassana, for example.
But you can't be in that state of bliss when you go down to get your car lubed, you see. So there are two forms of bliss. There is the form with seed and without seed. With seed is cognitive ecstasy, cognitive bliss. So I had this state of cognitive bliss, which means that you know a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. And you know it in a way that is so core, it's absolutely unquestionable. I knew at that time, and I know today, that you cannot misuse this tool. You either use it correctly or it doesn't work at all. And it's not going to work for some people. This is a fact.
Why?
And I have to accept, because it only works if you are grounded in the narrative.
So pretending that you're grounded in the narrative, not going to fly.
And in a way, this is a good point. I think I said this maybe in one of the talks that we had recently on Radio Gaianym. This app, it will test you. It will test if you're making believe or not. You cannot make believe with this. You can only do genuine magic with it or not at all. And that's the reality of it. And I'm releasing this now as I'm responsible for the fact that those who are still in make-believe, even if they think they're not, are not going to be able to achieve anything with this tool. That's a fucking brutal reality of it.
But they can die trying.
They can die trying. That's right. Those who do achieve true interactive magic with it will know and will achieve results that are beyond their wildest imagination. I'm sure of that as well. So it's both. I take responsibility for both. It's a very hard thing for me to do.
So would you
I don't want any more fucking responsibility. I've had enough in my life.
So would you describe you releasing the Chapter Cluster app as a double-edged sword or a poison chalice?
No, it's not a poison chalice. It is a double-edged sword. And it will sort things out. And some people may go insane trying to use this.
Well,
but they're already insane, so what difference does it make?
Exactly. Humanity is insane.
Humanity is insane. And this tool tests everyone who uses it. It tests whether you are in make-believe or whether you are really embedded with your heart and mind down into the cellular level of your body in the power of her dreaming. Do you know what the power of her dreaming is? You can't know what it is until you own it and command it. It's all about command. And I haven't made this clear yet, and I have to make this clear if and when I do the demonstration of the Shakti Cluster app. You do not use it to ask the Aeon Sophia, the Aeonic Mother, to do anything. You command her to do it. So I am putting that power of command in your hands with this tool.
You've said that all along about planetary tantra being about handling power, not being powerful over other people, but enjoyment of handling power.
The bliss, the thrill, the delight. Think of a figure skater. Think of a concert violinist. Think of anyone who does something through accomplishment and mastery, like sailing a little sailboat. Whatever. It's that same feeling that you get using this. That is the feeling of planetary tantra. You know, if we go back for a moment to the GNE, you remember the rule of the Kalikas in the GNE. And I haven't said this yet, but the rule of the Kalikas needs to be released along with the app. And the rule of the Kalikas is a really simple formula that you can repeat as many times as you like. And it goes like this. The highest desire of the Gaianym is that you command them by pleasure.
So you hold to your highest desire.
You hold to your highest desire, but you surrender its attainment.
Not precluding that attainment will be rendered to you by the power of the Shakti cluster.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And this is a sacred formula of power that can be repeated in exactly those words. When you hold this app in your hand, you realize what you have in the power of this tool. The teaching of planetary Tantra, which is Gnosis today, the real living Gnosis today, the power and knowledge of the mysteries, the true mysteries, which are all mysteries of the Great Mother, totally reverses and surpasses every other religious paradigm that has ever been created by the human mind. Because in those religious paradigms, what do you hear? Obedience to God, God's commands, serve God, obey God's commands, God commands you.
God's watching you. He's watching every move you make.
Right. No, this is not how it is in this practice. You command the power of the goddess. She wishes that you command her power. It's all about the command of her power in this experiment. Because due to the protocols of the Aeonic divinities of the Pleroma who designed us and who designed this experiment, they cannot intervene in an experiment. And so they require that you take their power and command it, and that is how the intervention happens.
So they can't intervene, but we can.
But we can.
By commanding
their power. That's right. And so that's what this tool is for. And it's my responsibility to instruct the world. I've taken this responsibility. Nobody put it on me. I'm not serving God. I'm not even serving Sophia. I'm just doing what I do from what I know. That's what I do, you see? And that responsibility is huge, and sometimes it causes me grief.
A lot of the time it causes you grief.
Well, you would know, because you're as close to me as can be. Don't mind me saying so.
So to reiterate, going back to your realisation, which has been preventing you from releasing the working of the Shakti Cluster app, what comes with it is a great responsibility of knowing that there is an element of tragedy and disappointment.
That's right. You know, tragedy is a word that's quite close to my heart, and I always make a point of saying what tragedy really is. And it's really important to know what tragedy is, because it's a terribly misused word.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, they say, the death of these students in this high school shooting was a tragedy. No, it wasn't. That was not a tragedy. A tragedy, according to the definition from the Greek playwrights, is the fall of something superior. Tragedy involves that which is superior. There is no tragedy for ordinary people, according to the classical definition. So, the tragedy is what happens when something that is superior and excellent in the human animal is thwarted or is defeated. That's tragedy. So, that's why Syria poses a tragedy today. The fate of Syria would be a great tragedy, but Syria is not going down. It's not. I'm certain that Syria is not going down. And it's very hard for me to say that because I'm not someone who comes out and predicts about world affairs. But I just know, as I just explained, that the role of Russia is not merely something that has happened in the great game of all these horrible political interests, but it's something that's happening in the larger scenario of her dreaming.
So let's talk about the... we need another word rather than hope, because that's a contaminated word. It's not a belief, it's not a hope, it's not magical thinking.
No.
So what's the word?
I would guess that if there were a word to replace hope, it would be confidence. That's right. Not even faith, but confidence. Confidence in this power, confidence in the power of the Rome, confidence in the interactivity with the wisdom goddess, and confidence that at the consummation of their works, that luminous child would rise to the occasion, and that everything would turn to the advantage of truth and beauty, which is how every decent human animal wants to live.
And how we were designed to live.
And how we were designed to live.
Yeah.
That's right.
So to summarise, you will hopefully, you will confidently release the app when the time is right, when you feel comfortable with it, when everything is in place, or you may not.
That's right. I'll do it as I can do it from the core.
When everything is in place and you feel good about it, because you're not feeling
No, I'm not.
good about
No,
it.
I haven't come to the place yet where I can stay behind the medicine. It's very powerful medicine, this planetary medicine. This planetary tantra is very powerful medicine.
If you're not overwhelmed, you're not in the practice.
Spoken like a true and loyal warrior. Yes, indeed. So I guess we'll leave it at that.
So until next time, be mysterious, but keep it real.